I beat a man bloody in front of 50 people and destroyed my wife's life with my bare hands. And I'd do it again. But let me start at the beginning, before the blood and broken glass, before the screaming and sirens. Let me tell you about the 12 years I spent building what I thought was a solid marriage, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. My name is Michael Turner, and I work construction. Not the clean, air-conditioned kind where you wear a hard hat for show and carry a clipboard. I'm talking about real construction, the kind that leaves your hands permanently calloused and your back aching every night. The kind that pays well, enough if you're willing to bleed for it. Rebecca used to love my hands. She'd trace the scars with her fingertips, kiss the calluses, call me her grounded man. That was before she started working at Meridian Marketing, before the promotions and corporate parties, before she decided I wasn't enough anymore. I noticed the change 6 months ago, subtle at first. She stopped asking about my day, started wincing when I came home covered in drywall dust. The woman who once bragged to her friends about her husband, who actually builds things, began introducing me differently. "This is Michael," she'd say, at neighborhood gatherings, pausing just long enough before adding, "He works in construction." The pause grew longer each time. Then came the comments. "You wouldn't understand. It's a marketing thing." That's cute, but the corporate world doesn't work that way. Maybe if you worked in an office, you'd get it. Each word carefully chosen to remind me of my place, beneath her. The house I'd renovated with my own hands, working weekends for 2 years. She started calling it dated. The truck I'd bought cash after landing the Harrison Plaza contract. Embarrassing. The practical solutions I offered to her work problems. Simplistic. I kept working, kept paying for everything she wanted. The designer clothes that appeared in her closet, clothes I'd never seen her wear. The new perfume that didn't smell like my wife anymore. The late nights at the office that left her energized instead of exhausted. Last Thursday, she was sitting at our kitchen table, the one I'd built from reclaimed oak, scrolling through her phone with that new smile she'd developed. The one that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. "There's something I want you to come to," she said, sliding an elegant invitation across the table. Gold embossing on cream cardstock. Meridian Marketing Annual Gala. "You should come. It's time everyone met my husband properly." The way she said properly made my jaw clench. Like I was a dog she'd finally trained well enough to show in public, black. "Tie?" I asked, reading the details. She laughed. Not with me, but at me. "Don't worry. We'll get you a rental. Something that fits appropriately." Appropriately. Another loaded word. "When is it?" 2 weeks. Saturday the 15th. She stood, taking her phone but leaving the invitation. "David will be there. You know, my boss I've mentioned? He's dying to meet you. Says he wants to know the man behind the woman." David Ashford. She'd been mentioning him more lately. David thinks this. David says that. David's so insightful about market trends. David who sent her flowers for closing the Morrison account. Flowers she'd hidden in her office at home. "I'll be there," I said. Perfect. She kissed my forehead like I was a child who'd agreed to behave. "This will be good for us, Michael. You'll see." As she walked away, her phone buzzed. She smiled at the screen, a real smile this time, and typed quickly before disappearing upstairs. The invitation sat on my handmade table like a declaration of war. I knew that invitation was a weapon aimed at my heart. I just didn't know she planned to pull the trigger in front of an audience. The rental tux hung in our bedroom closet like a straitjacket waiting for its victim. Rebecca had picked it out herself, insisting on coming with me to the shop, making sure it was appropriate for her world. She'd actually used that word 3 times during the fitting. But I wasn't thinking about the tux that Tuesday night when I heard her laughing in the bathroom. She'd locked the door, something she'd started doing recently, and her voice carried through the old wooden frame I'd never gotten around to replacing. "Trust me, David. It'll be perfect." Her voice was light, playful in a way it hadn't been, with me in months. I'll parade him around like the blue-collar joke he is, and then everyone will understand why I'm making a change. My hand froze on the bedroom doorknob I'd been about to open. No, he won't cause a scene. Michael's too simple for that. He'll probably thank me for including him. She laughed again, and the sound was like grinding glass. It's time to stop pretending this marriage has a future. I backed away from the door, my work boots silent on the carpet she'd insisted we needed. My hands, the ones that had built our deck, fixed our roof, renovated our entire house, clenched into fists. David Ashford. Of course. Over the next week, I became someone I didn't recognize. I checked her phone when she showered. I looked through her car when she went jogging. I played the devoted, oblivious husband while gathering evidence like I was building a case. The receipts were easy to find once I started looking. Le Bernardin, $400 for lunch. The St. Regis Hotel Bar, $200 for drinks. Always during work hours, always on our joint credit card. She wasn't even trying to hide it. That's how little she thought of me. Thursday afternoon, I left work early, telling my foreman I had a dental appointment. Instead, I sat in my truck outside Meridian Marketing and waited. At 2 p.m., Rebecca walked out with David Ashford. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, lean, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. His hand rested on her lower back as he guided her to his Mercedes. I followed them to the Carlisle Hotel downtown. They didn't even make it. To the elevator before his hands were in her hair, her laugh echoing through the lobby. The doorman looked away, embarrassed. I sat in my truck for 3 hours until they came back out, her makeup freshly applied, his tie slightly askew. That night, she told me about her long strategy meeting, how exhausting it was to be so valuable to the company. I nodded and asked if she wanted me to run her a bath. She kissed my cheek and called me sweet. The worst discovery came Friday. I'd been looking for my good watch, the one Rebecca had bought me for our 10th anniversary, when I found them in her car's glove compartment. Love letters. Actual handwritten letters from David hidden under the insurance papers. My darling Rebecca, soon we won't have to hide. After the gala, after everyone sees what you're leaving behind, we can finally be together properly. You deserve someone who matches your ambition, your sophistication, not someone who's content with manual labor. The way you laugh at his simple view of the world, God, you're delicious when you're cruel. The last one was dated 3 days ago. Everything is arranged for the gala. By the end of the night, he'll be too humiliated to even fight the divorce. Then you're mine, officially and completely. I sat in her Audi, the one I'd bought her for Christmas, holding another man's love letters to my wife, and felt something inside me break. Not break like sadness, break like a dam holding back 12 years of being taken for granted, but I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I went inside and made dinner, her favorite pasta dish. I listened to her complain about her day, smiled when she mentioned the gala again, and even ironed her dress for her when she asked. "You're being so helpful lately," she said, suspicious for just a moment. "Just want everything to be perfect for your big night," I replied. She wanted to humiliate me in front of her world. I decided to give her exactly what she wanted, and then some. The ballroom at the Meridian Tower was everything Rebecca's world represented, all surface shine and no foundation. Crystal chandeliers threw light across marble floors, and everywhere I looked, people in $1,000 outfits discussed million-dollar deals. Rebecca had insisted on arriving separately. "I need to handle some setup details," she'd said, but I knew better. She wanted her entrance with me to be perfectly timed for maximum impact. She found me at the bar, nursing a beer, they actually had beer, hidden behind the champagne like a guilty secret. She looked stunning in her black dress, the one I'd ironed, and for a moment I remembered the woman I'd married. Then she opened her mouth. "Michael, there you are!" Her voice carried across the room, deliberately loud. "Everyone, this is my husband." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in just enough to hurt. "Michael works in construction." The way she said it, like she was apologizing for bringing a stray dog to a formal dinner. "Construction? How refreshing," said a woman in pearls. "You must have such interesting stories." "Oh, he does." Rebecca jumped in before I could speak. "Just yesterday, he was trying to explain corporate strategy to me using concrete mixing as a metaphor. Isn't that adorable?" The group laughed. I smiled and played along. "Michael thinks everything can be fixed with a hammer and some elbow grease," Rebecca continued, her hand still gripping my arm. "I keep telling him the business world requires more sophisticated thinking." David appeared then, as if summoned. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. "The famous Michael. Rebecca talks about you all the time." "Does she?" I met his eyes. "Oh, yes. Your practical approach to things. Very grounding for someone as visionary as Rebecca." He touched her shoulder as he said it, letting his hand linger. The next hour was a masterclass in humiliation. Rebecca dragged me from group to group, each introduction more degrading than the last. She told the story about how I'd suggested she handle a difficult client, like pouring a foundation, steady and level. She mentioned how I'd once shown up to pick her up from work in my dirty work clothes, looking like he'd escaped from a chain gang. David stayed close, adding his own barbs disguised as compliments. "Manual labor must be so satisfying, so uncomplicated. There's something honest about working with your hands instead of your mind. Rebecca needs someone simple in her life to balance all her complexity." They touched constantly, her hand on his arm when she laughed, his fingers brushing her back as they moved through the room. They shared looks over champagne glasses, private smiles at my expense. The other executives played along, their politeness more cutting than outright insults would have been. They spoke slowly to me, explained basic concepts like I was a child, and complimented Rebecca on being so patient with our different worlds. By the time Rebecca made her toast, my jaw ached from forcing smiles. She clinked her glass, waiting for attention. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This company has given me so much opportunity, growth, and the courage to recognize what I truly deserve." She looked directly at me. "To new beginnings and leaving behind what no longer serves us." The room applauded. David raised his glass to her, his smile promising everything she thought she wanted. A few people glanced at me with pity, finally understanding what they were witnessing. Rebecca leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear. "I'm going to powder my nose. Try not to embarrass yourself while I'm gone." Then, louder, to David. "Would you mind showing me where you put those quarterly reports? I wanted to review them before Monday." He nodded, professional and smooth. "Of course, they're in my office." They walked away together, her hips swaying, his hand finding the small of her back as soon as they thought they were out of sight. A few executives watched them go, then looked at me with a mixture of pity and amusement. I counted to 60, then followed. The executive floor was dim, lit only by emergency lighting and the city lights streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Their voices carried from David's corner office, the door slightly ajar. "God, I can't believe I wasted 12 years with that loser," Rebecca was saying. I could see them through the gap. Her dress hiked up, sitting on his desk, his hands tangled in her hair. "He's so pathetic. He actually thinks this marriage meant something." David laughed, pressing closer to her. "The look on his face tonight was priceless. He has no idea what's coming. By Monday, you'll be single and we can stop hiding." "The simpleton probably thinks I'm actually reviewing reports," Rebecca giggled, wrapping her legs around him. I'd heard enough. It was time to show them both what happens when you push a construction worker too far. I kicked the door so hard, it slammed against the wall, leaving a dent in the plaster. Rebecca shrieked, scrambling off the desk, her dress falling back down. David stumbled backward, his face shifting from surprise to fear in the space of a heartbeat. "Michael," Rebecca started. I didn't let her finish. My fist connected with David's jaw before he could even raise his hands. The sound was wet, brutal. Nothing. Like the movies. He crashed into his achievement awards, sending them scattering across the floor. "Michael, stop!" Rebecca screamed, but I was beyond stopping. The second punch broke David's nose. I felt it crunch under my knuckles, blood exploding. Across his white shirt, splattering Rebecca's black dress. He tried to shield himself, raising his manicured hands, but I grabbed his $2,000 suit and drove my knee into his ribs. "Please," David begged, his voice high and desperate. "Please, I'm sorry. Sorry." He was sorry now. I threw him. Against his desk, the desk where he'd had his hands all over my wife. His computer crashed to the floor. Family photos shattered. He tried to crawl away, leaving bloody handprints on his white carpet, but I grabbed his ankle and dragged him back. "This what you wanted?" I snarled, driving my work boot, the steel-toed ones Rebecca always hated, into his ribs. "To see what I'm really like?" David curled into a ball, sobbing. Blood ran from his nose, his mouth, a cut above his eye. His suit was ruined, torn and stained. This man who'd called my work simple was crying like a child, begging for mercy. I heard voices. In the hallway, people drawn by Rebecca's screaming. "Good, let them all see." "You're going to kill him!" Rebecca shrieked. She tried to grab my arm, but I shoved her away. 12 years, I said, punctuating each word with another kick. 12 years of working myself to the bone for you. The doorway filled with people, executives. In their formal wear, phones out, recording everything. They gasped as I grabbed David by his bloody shirt and hauled him up. "Is this sophisticated enough for you?" I asked Rebecca, then dropped David and let him crumple to the floor, semi-conscious and moaning. I turned to face my wife. She stood there, her designer dress splattered with her lover's blood, her perfect makeup running, her carefully styled hair a mess. The executives behind me were silent, their phones still recording. "You wanted to humiliate me?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Now everyone knows who the real is." The word hit like a physical blow. Rebecca flinched, her hand going to her throat. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" I grabbed a champagne glass from a side table and threw it at Rebecca's feet. It exploded against the floor, shards mixing with David's blood. "Pack your shit," I said. "You're done. Divorce papers are coming tomorrow." Rebecca's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. Behind me, David groaned, trying to sit up and failing. Someone in the crowd was calling 911, their voice shaky. Pushed through the crowd of executives, none of them meeting my eyes. They parted like water, their expensive shoes stepping back from my work boots. As I passed, I heard the whispers starting. "That's her husband? She was cheating with David? Did you see? This is going to be everywhere by morning." The elevator ride down was silent except for the classical music playing softly through the speakers. My knuckles were bleeding, David's blood mixing with my own. My rented tux was ruined, but I'd never felt more like myself. Outside, sirens were already approaching. I walked to my truck, my embarrassing truck, and drove away from the Meridian Tower. In the rearview mirror, I could see the red and blue lights arriving. I walked out of that ballroom with my head high and my marriage buried. But Rebecca's real punishment was just beginning. The videos hit social media before I even made it home. Construction worker destroys wife's affair partner at corporate gala went viral within 3 hours. By morning, it had 2 million views. The comments were surprisingly split. Half called me a psycho who belonged in jail. The other half said I was a hero who'd done what any betrayed spouse dreamed of. Someone started a GoFundMe for my legal defense that raised $30,000 in 2 days. Rebecca and David were fired Monday morning. Meridian Marketing released a statement about conduct unbecoming and violation of company moral standards. Their CEO personally apologized for the distressing incident at our annual gala. David spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Shattered orbital bone, 3 broken ribs, severe concussion. His wife served him divorce papers in his hospital bed. She took the kids, the house, and half of everything else. His executive career was over. No company would touch him after the videos. Rebecca's fall was complete. The marketing world is smaller than you'd think, and everyone had seen the videos. The woman covered in her affair partner's blood, exposed as a cheater in front of her entire professional network. She couldn't get an interview anywhere. Her parents, who'd watched the videos in horror, called me to apologize for their daughter's behavior and cut her off completely. I pled down to misdemeanor assault. My lawyer successfully argued extreme emotional distress and provocation. 6 months of community service, teaching carpentry to at-risk youth. The construction community rallied around me. My company gave me a raise. Clients specifically requested me, wanting the guy who stands up for himself. Rebecca left town within a month. Last I heard, she was working retail in Arizona, living in a studio apartment. The woman who'd thought I wasn't sophisticated enough now folded clothes for minimum wage. The house, our house, the one I'd rebuilt with my own hands, is mine, free and clear. She signed it over in the divorce just to make everything go away, faster. I kept everything except her clothes, which I donated to charity. 6 months later, I sleep peacefully in my own bed, run my own contracting business, and my hands, the ones she'd grown to despise, have built me a new life. Sometimes, I get recognized. "Hey, you're that guy from the video." Usually followed by a handshake and a "good for you, man." The construction worker she thought wasn't good enough had proved a simple truth. When you build someone's entire world, you also know exactly how to destroy it, and I'd do it again. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I found them in my office, not caught red-handed in some cliché hotel room or parked car, but in the space I'd built with my own hands, the home office where I'd spent countless nights coding solutions for other people's problems, while my own marriage rotted from the inside. Brielle was pressed against my mahogany desk, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy her for our anniversary. Her legs wrapped around a man I'd never seen before. Her wedding ring, the one I'd worked overtime for 6 months to afford, glinted mockingly in the afternoon light as her fingers clawed at his back. 6-year-old Levi stood frozen in the doorway beside me, his Spider-Man backpack sliding off his tiny shoulders. "Daddy," he whispered, his voice small and broken. "Why is Mommy wrestling with the strange man?" That's when I knew my life was over, and that's when I decided hers would be too. My name is Jason Whitmore, and until that Thursday afternoon, I believed I was living the American dream. I'm 34, a senior software engineer at TechFlow Solutions, and the kind of man who still opens car doors and remembers anniversaries. I met Brielle 8 years ago at a coffee shop near the university where she was finishing her master's in social work. She was radiant, all golden hair and infectious laughter, with a passion for helping abused women that made my chest tight with admiration. "You're going to save the world," I told her on our 3rd date, and I meant it. We married 2 years later in her parents' backyard. Simple ceremony, simple life. I wanted to give her everything she deserved and more. When Levi came along, I worked double shifts to pay for the house in Maple Ridge, the one with the white picket fence and the swing set I built myself. When our daughter Emma was born 3 years later, I took on freelance projects to cover her medical bills and preschool tuition. Brielle worked part-time at a women's shelter downtown, and I was proud of her for it. She'd come home with stories about helping women escape abusive relationships, and I'd hold her while she cried for their pain. She was my hero, this fierce, compassionate woman who fought for the voiceless. "You work too much," she'd say sometimes, kissing my forehead as I hunched over my laptop at midnight. "But I know why you do it. You're building something beautiful for us." I was. Every line of code, every debugging session, every weekend I spent optimizing systems instead of watching football, it was all for them. For the vacation fund, for Levi's college savings, for the life I wanted to give my family. Brielle understood that. She was my partner, my anchor, my reason for everything. Or so I thought. The man I caught her with that day? His name was Miles Thatcher, and I learned later that he was the executive director of the nonprofit where Brielle had started volunteering 6 months earlier. Married, father of 2, pillar of the community, the kind of man who gave speeches about family values at charity galas while screwing other men's wives in their home offices. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The betrayal didn't start that Thursday afternoon. It had been building for months, brick by poisonous brick, while I was too blind to see the foundation crumbling beneath my feet. Looking back, I can trace the first crack to about 8 months before I found them together. It started with small things so subtle I dismissed them as stress or postpartum adjustment, even though Emma was already 3. Brielle began picking fights about my work schedule, not reasonable conversations about work-life balance, but venomous attacks disguised as concern. "You're obsessed with that computer," she'd hiss when I worked late on a project that would net us an extra $2,000. "The kids barely know you exist." When I tried to explain that I was doing it for them, for our future, she'd roll her eyes and walk away. "That's what every absent father says, Jason. You're becoming a stranger in your own home." The accusations escalated. I was emotionally unavailable. I was using work to avoid intimacy. I was setting a terrible example for the children. She said these things in front of Levi and Emma, her voice dripping with disappointment that made my chest ache with guilt. "Maybe you should talk to someone," she suggested one evening after a particularly brutal argument about me missing Emma's dance recital for a client emergency. "You have issues with control and obsession." I actually considered it. I made an appointment with a therapist and spent 3 sessions wondering if I was the problem. Dr. Martinez was kind, but ultimately useless. She kept asking about my childhood and my relationship with my father, when all I wanted to know was why my wife looked at me like I was a stranger. Meanwhile, Brielle started going out more. Girls' nights that stretched until 2 in the morning. Volunteer meetings that required overnight trips to team-building retreats. She'd come home smelling like wine and guilt, her lipstick slightly smudged, her phone clutched protectively in her hand. "How was your night?" I'd ask. "Fine," she'd snap. "God, Jason, can a woman have friends without getting the 3rd degree? You're so paranoid." The gaslighting was surgical in its precision. When I found receipts for expensive dinners I hadn't attended, she accused me of snooping and not trusting her. When I pointed out she'd been staying out later and later, she said I was keeping tabs like some kind of stalker. When I asked why she seemed so distant, so cold, she turned it back on me. "Maybe if you were present, really present, instead of buried in your work, we'd have something to talk about." She recruited allies. Her sister called me one Sunday to check in about how I was handling things. "Brielle's worried about you," she said, her voice saccharine with fake concern. "She says you've been different lately, controlling, angry." I wasn't angry. I was confused, hurt, desperately trying to save a marriage I didn't understand was already dead. But Brielle was spinning a narrative. Poor Brielle, trapped with an obsessive, emotionally distant husband who cared more about his career than his family. The cruelest part? She used the children as weapons. "Daddy, why do you make Mommy cry?" Levi asked me one morning over breakfast. My blood went cold. "What do you mean, buddy?" "She cries when you're working. She says you don't love us anymore." I confronted her that night, and she denied it with wounded innocence that would have fooled a polygraph. "I would never say that to the children, Jason. God, what kind of monster do you think I am?" She started crying, real tears streaming down her face. "Is this what you think of me? That I'd poison our kids against their father?" I apologized. I held her while she sobbed about how hard it was to feel like a single mother, how lonely she was, how she just wanted her husband back. I promised to do better, work less, be more present. I canceled a lucrative contract and turned down a promotion that would have required travel. None of it mattered. The fights continued. The coldness deepened, and Brielle kept disappearing, piece by piece, into a life that didn't include me. 3 weeks before I found them together, she started mentioning Miles Thatcher. "Miles thinks we should apply for that housing grant," she'd say over dinner. "Miles has such innovative ideas about trauma-informed care. Miles invited me to present at the conference in Denver. Always Miles. Miles this, Miles that." When I asked about him, casually, just curious about her work, she got defensive. "He's my supervisor, Jason. Of course I talk about him. God, you're so suspicious of everything." But something in her eyes had changed when she said his name. A light I hadn't seen in months, maybe years. She was glowing in a way that made my stomach turn with recognition and dread. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed she'd bought new lingerie, expensive pieces I'd never seen her wear for me. I noticed she'd started working out again, spending hours at the gym with a trainer she claimed was helping her regain confidence. I noticed she'd changed her phone password and started sleeping with it under her pillow. "You're being paranoid again," she said when I mentioned it. "Honestly, Jason, this jealousy is really unattractive. Maybe you should go back to Dr. Martinez." But paranoia implies irrationality, and there's nothing irrational about pattern recognition. I'm a software engineer. I debug problems for a living, and my marriage was riddled with bugs that all pointed to the same root cause. I just needed proof. The proof came from the most innocent source imaginable: my 6-year-old son's upset stomach. That Thursday started like any other. I kissed Brielle goodbye as she left for her all-day workshop on secondary trauma, watched her drive away in the Honda I'd bought her for her birthday. I dropped the kids at school and daycare, then headed to the office for what should have been a normal day of code reviews and client meetings. At 1:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Peterson, our babysitter. "Levi came home sick from school, fever and nausea. Should I take him to urgent care?" I told her I'd leave work immediately, but she texted back, "It's okay, I can handle it, but he's asking for you. And Jason, there's something else. Can you call me?" The drive home took 17 minutes. 17 minutes of worst-case scenarios running through my head. Levi in the hospital, Emma hurt, some terrible accident. I called Mrs. Peterson from the driveway. "He's fine," she said quickly. "Just a stomach bug. But Jason, he said something that worried me, about seeing his mommy with a man in your office." My hands went numb. What exactly did he say? He was pretty upset, talking about nightmares and tummy aches. He mentioned seeing Mommy wrestling with someone in Daddy's office. He seemed confused and scared. I wasn't sure if I should... I hung up and ran inside. Levi was curled up on the couch with his favorite blanket, pale and small. When he saw me, he started crying. "Daddy, I had a bad dream about Mommy." I sat beside him, keeping my voice steady. "Tell me about it, buddy." "She was in your office with a strange man, and they were wrestling, but it didn't look like fun wrestling, and Mommy made sounds like when she stubs her toe, but different, and she wasn't wearing her shirt." My world tilted. "When did you see this, Levi? Was it really a dream?" He shook his head, tears streaming. "Tuesday. I came home because my tummy hurt, and Mrs. Peterson said I could get juice from the kitchen. But I heard noises from your office. The door was a little open and I saw them. The man had no shirt either, and Mommy was on your desk and—" "It's okay," I whispered, pulling him close. "You don't have to tell me anymore." But he couldn't stop. The words poured out of him. How he'd run back to Mrs. Peterson without saying anything. How he'd been having nightmares ever since. How his tummy hurt because he didn't understand what he'd seen, but knew it was wrong. "Is Mommy sick?" he asked. "Is that why she was wrestling with the strange man?" I held my son while my marriage died in real time. Brielle wasn't at a workshop. She was here, in our home, in my office, with another man. While our children were supposed to be safely at school, while I was working to pay for the life she was destroying. That night, after Brielle came home with stories about her enlightening day and breakthrough discussions with colleagues, I tucked Levi into bed and sat in the dark, staring at my wedding photo. The man in that picture, young, optimistic, so fucking naive, had believed in forever. He'd built his entire existence around the woman sleeping peacefully beside him, the woman who'd spent the afternoon screwing another man in the space where he worked to provide for their family. That man was gone. And in his place sat someone who understood that love without respect is just elaborate self-destruction. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to scream or break things or make ultimatums. Those were the actions of a man who still believed in salvaging something worth saving. Instead, I was going to do what I do best: solve problems, methodically, completely. With the precision of someone who understood that some bugs aren't worth fixing, they're worth documenting, isolating, and permanently removing from the system. Brielle had rewritten the rules of our marriage without telling me. Fine. But she'd made one critical error in her code. She'd underestimated the programmer. Friday morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that comes after you've stopped fighting the inevitable. Brielle was showering, humming some song I didn't recognize, probably something Miles had introduced her to. I lay in bed listening to her casual happiness and felt something cold and surgical settle in my chest. I'm not an impulsive man. I don't make decisions in anger or act on emotion. I'm a systems architect. I see the big picture, identify the critical paths, and execute with precision. What I was planning wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. It was debugging. Brielle and Miles had introduced corruption into the system of my life, and I was going to remove that corruption completely. Step 1. Intelligence gathering. I'd spent 8 years in this house, upgrading and optimizing every piece of technology we owned. Smart thermostat, security cameras, wireless network, automated lighting. I'd built a connected home that could practically run itself. What Brielle didn't know was that every smart device was a potential surveillance tool, and I had administrative access to all of them. Over the weekend, while she took the kids to her mother's for their monthly visit, I went to work. First, I installed micro cameras behind the vent grates in my office, the living room, and our bedroom. Nothing in the bathrooms or the kids' rooms. I wasn't a monster. Just the spaces where adults made adult decisions. The cameras were smaller than coins, wireless, and completely invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Next, I rewired the Nest thermostat to include a hidden microphone and modified the smoke detectors to record audio. I embedded additional mics in the living room lamps and, my personal favorite, inside Brielle's vanity mirror. Every morning, she'd sit there applying makeup and talking on the phone, never knowing she was confessing to a digital priest that would remember everything. I upgraded our home network with enterprise-grade monitoring software that would track every device, every website, every message sent from our Wi-Fi. I cloned her phone remotely using techniques I'd learned in cybersecurity seminars, giving me access to her texts, calls, emails, and location data in real time. Finally, I set up a secure server farm in the basement, hidden behind my old gaming setup. Everything would be recorded, encrypted, and stored with military-grade security. This wasn't just about catching them, it was about building an unassailable case that would destroy them both. Step 2. Legal preparation. I researched family law attorneys and found Miranda Castellanos, a partner at Blackstone and Associates who specialized in high-conflict divorces. She had a reputation for being brilliant, ruthless, and expensive. Perfect. I scheduled a consultation under the pretense of preventive planning and laid out a hypothetical scenario involving infidelity and child custody. Miranda's eyes lit up with predatory interest. In cases involving documented adultery, especially when children are present, judges tend to be very sympathetic to the betrayed spouse, she explained. But the key word is documented. You need irrefutable proof. Video evidence, electronic communications, patterns of deception that show a complete breakdown of trust and parental responsibility. I paid her retainer that day and asked her to prepare divorce papers in advance. Just in case, I said. She smiled. I like clients who plan ahead. Step 3. Financial insulation. I opened new bank accounts at a different institution and began quietly transferring assets. Not hiding money, that would be illegal and discoverable, but consolidating our finances in accounts where I held primary control, preparing for the inevitable division of assets. I wanted to make sure Levi and Emma's futures were protected, regardless of what happened to their mother. I also started documenting every expense related to Brielle's affair. The new lingerie, the gym membership, the dinners and hotels I hadn't paid for but would probably be expected to cover in a settlement. If she wanted to burn down our marriage, she could pay for the matches. Step 4. Professional leverage. This was the delicate part. I needed to research Miles Thatcher without tipping him off to my investigation. I started with public records, social media, professional profiles, charity websites where he was featured. I learned about his wife Sarah, his 2 children, his reputation as a family man and community leader. Most importantly, I learned about his employer. The Riverside Foundation was a respected nonprofit focused on women's services and domestic violence prevention. Their mission statement emphasized integrity, trust, and moral leadership. Their funding came largely from city grants and private donations from conservative donors who valued traditional family structures. Miles Thatcher, executive director, pillar of the community, advocate for abused women. If the board discovered he was having an affair with a married volunteer, using his position of authority to seduce a vulnerable woman, well, that would be a public relations nightmare that would end his career permanently. Step 5. Timing and execution. I would give them 6 weeks. 6 weeks to provide me with enough evidence to destroy them both. 6 weeks for them to dig their graves so deep they'd never climb out. I would document every lie, every betrayal, every moment of their selfish pleasure stolen from my family's happiness. And then, when I had everything I needed, I would detonate their lives with the precision of a controlled demolition. Quick, clean, and absolutely devastating. The beautiful thing about systemic corruption is that once you identify it, the solution is always the same: complete removal and replacement with something better. I wasn't just planning to expose them, I was planning to rebuild my family's life from the ground up, without the toxic elements that had poisoned everything I'd worked to create. Brielle thought she was rewriting our story. She had no idea she was just adding chapters to her own destruction. For 6 weeks, I watched my marriage die in high-definition detail, while maintaining the performance of a devoted husband. Every morning, I kissed Brielle goodbye and told her I loved her. Every evening, I asked about her day and listened to her elaborate lies with the patience of a man documenting evidence for court. The footage was even worse than I'd imagined. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons became their regular schedule. Brielle would text me around noon. Stuck in a long meeting, might be late tonight, while she was actually racing home to meet Miles. I watched them stumble through my front door like teenagers, pawing at each other, knocking over picture frames of our family vacations as they made their way to my office. They used my desk, my couch, my fucking chair. The chair where I'd held Levi during his nightmares, where I'd rocked Emma to sleep as a baby. They defiled every space that mattered to me, and the cameras captured it all in crystal-clear detail. But the sex wasn't the worst part. The worst part was listening to them talk afterward. "He's so boring," Brielle said one Thursday, lying naked on my office couch while Miles traced circles on her stomach. "All he ever talks about is work and the kids. He has no passion, no spontaneity. Sometimes I wonder if he's even capable of real emotion." "You deserve so much better," Miles replied, and I could hear the practiced manipulation in his voice. "A woman like you, intelligent, passionate, beautiful, you shouldn't have to settle for some emotionally stunted workaholic." "I know, God, I know. But the kids? What about the kids? They'd be better off with parents who aren't miserable. Look at how happy you are now, how alive you seem. Don't you think Levi and Emma deserve to see their mother like this?" They were rewriting history in real time, turning my devotion into neglect, my sacrifices into selfishness. In their version of events, I was the villain, the absent father, the controlling husband, the obstacle to Brielle's authentic happiness. The manipulation extended to our children. I watched, sickened, as Brielle coached Levi and Emma during their afternoon snacks. "You know Daddy loves you," she'd say, her voice honey-sweet. "But sometimes grown-ups get confused about what's important. If anyone ever asks you about Mommy and Daddy, you can tell them that Daddy works all the time and sometimes makes Mommy sad. But that's not your fault, okay? Daddy just has some problems he needs to work on." She was preparing them to testify against me in a custody battle I didn't even know was coming. My own children turned into weapons aimed at my heart. By week 4, I had enough evidence to destroy them both 10 times over. But I wanted to be thorough. I wanted them to feel so secure in their deception that the revelation would shatter them completely. I also started gathering intelligence on their future plans. Brielle had been researching divorce attorneys, not Miranda Castellanos, thankfully, but a firm known for aggressive tactics and scorched earth strategies. She'd been researching child custody laws, Googling phrases like emotional abandonment and workaholic fathers, and proving unfitness as a parent. Miles had been more careful, but not careful enough. His browsing history revealed searches for apartments, job listings in other cities, and, most telling, leaving wife for younger woman, and minimizing alimony in divorce proceedings. They were planning to destroy my life, take my children, and ride off into the sunset with my money funding their happiness. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive. By week 6, I was ready. I started with the legal documentation. Miranda had prepared a comprehensive divorce filing citing adultery, emotional abuse, and parental alienation. The evidence package was 200 pages long, video clips with timestamps, transcribed conversations, financial records showing Brielle's deceptive spending, and screenshots of her internet searches revealing her premeditated plan to destroy me in court. The judge who reviewed the emergency custody petition didn't hesitate. Full temporary custody awarded to me, with Brielle's visitation restricted to supervised meetings pending a full investigation. But that was just the opening move. Phase 2. Professional destruction. I'd spent weeks crafting the perfect anonymous email to Sarah Thatcher, Miles's wife. Not angry or vindictive, just concerned. A friend who thought she should know what her husband was doing at work. The attached video compilation was edited with surgical precision. Miles and Brielle in compromising positions, audio of them mocking their respective spouses, timestamps showing the affair occurred during work hours when Miles was supposedly in important meetings. Sarah Thatcher filed for divorce 48 hours later. The email to the Riverside Foundation's board of directors was more formal, an anonymous whistleblower concerned about ethical violations by the executive director. I included documentation of Miles using his position of authority to seduce a vulnerable volunteer, engaging in sexual activity in the nonprofit's satellite office, technically true, he'd taken Brielle there twice, and misusing company resources to facilitate his affair. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning. Miles was terminated that afternoon. Phase 3. Social destruction. This required more finesse. I couldn't directly release the evidence. That would make me look vindictive and potentially violate privacy laws. But I could make sure the right people had access to the right information at the right time. A friend of a friend worked for a local blog that covered nonprofit scandals. An anonymous tip about the Riverside Foundation's leadership crisis led to some very interesting investigative journalism. The blog post, Family Values Foundation, fires executive director over adultery scandal, went viral in our community within hours. Brielle's workplace at the women's shelter learned about the scandal through their professional network. Turns out that having an affair with a nonprofit executive while working in domestic violence services is considered a serious ethical violation. Who knew that an organization dedicated to helping women escape abusive relationships wouldn't approve of their employees' home-wrecking activities? She was terminated for conduct unbecoming the same day Miles lost his job. Phase 4. Personal destruction. The social media aspect handled itself. Once the story broke, Brielle's friends and colleagues began distancing themselves publicly. The woman who'd spent years building her reputation as a champion for abused women was now seen as a predator who'd used her volunteer position to seduce a married father. Her yoga studio, where she'd spent countless evenings claiming to be in meditation circles, banned her after other members complained about her presence making them uncomfortable. The PTA at Levi's school quietly removed her from all committees. Even her book club asked her to stop attending. The beautiful thing about reputation destruction in the digital age is that it's self-perpetuating. Once the narrative took hold, everyone wanted to distance themselves from the scandal. Brielle became socially radioactive overnight. Phase 5. The finale. On a Wednesday evening, exactly 7 weeks after I'd started documenting their affair, I came home from work to find Brielle in the kitchen making dinner like everything was normal. "How was your day?" she asked, not looking up from the stove. "Productive," I said. "How was yours?" She was about to answer when her phone buzzed with a call from her sister, then her mother, then her best friend. The news about Miles's firing and her own termination was spreading through her social network like wildfire. I watched her face crumble as she realized her world was collapsing in real time. When she finally looked at me, I saw the exact moment she understood that I knew everything. "Jason," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I can explain." "No need," I said calmly. "Your bags are packed and waiting by the front door. The locks will be changed in an hour. Your copy of the divorce papers is with your belongings." She started crying then, not the manipulative tears she'd used to control me for months, but genuine panic as she realized the magnitude of her situation. No job, no marriage, no home, no reputation, and no custody of the children she'd tried to turn against me. "Where am I supposed to go?" she sobbed. "I believe your mother is expecting you," I replied. "She's agreed to let you stay temporarily, provided you follow her rules about bringing shame to the family name." The last thing I saw before she left was her standing in the driveway, holding a suitcase and staring at the house she'd lost through her own choices. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the kitchen of the house I fought to keep, watching Levi help Emma with her homework while dinner cooks in the slow cooker. The morning light streams through windows I no longer have to worry about hiding secrets behind, and for the first time in years, I feel genuinely at peace. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago. Brielle contested everything, of course, claiming I'd somehow entrapped her, and that the evidence I'd gathered was illegally obtained. Her attorney, a bargain basement divorce lawyer she'd hired with money borrowed from her mother, tried to argue that I'd violated her privacy and that the footage should be inadmissible. Miranda Castellanos destroyed those arguments with surgical precision. Everything I'd done was legal: surveillance of my own property, monitoring of shared accounts and devices, protection of evidence of criminal adultery. The judge was particularly unsympathetic when Miranda played the audio of Brielle coaching our children to lie about me in court. "Mrs. Whitmore," the judge said, her voice cold with disgust, "you attempted to use these children as weapons against their father while conducting an affair in the family home. Your credibility in matters of child welfare is, frankly, non-existent. I was awarded full custody, the house, and the majority of our assets. Brielle was ordered to pay child support, a laughable amount given her unemployment status, and granted supervised visitation every other weekend. She's appealed, of course, but Miranda assures me it's a futile gesture. You can't appeal facts, and the facts are devastating. Miles Thatcher's destruction was even more complete. His wife Sarah took him for everything in their divorce: house, savings, custody of their children. The nonprofit world is small and gossip-driven. His reputation is so thoroughly destroyed that he's essentially unemployable in his chosen field. Last I heard, he'd moved back in with his parents in Ohio and was working at a car dealership. The beautiful irony is that his affair with Brielle cost him everything, and now she won't even take his calls. Turns out that when you strip away the excitement of sneaking around and the shared thrill of betraying your spouses, there's not much substance left between two fundamentally selfish people. Brielle is living with her mother in a cramped apartment across town, working part-time at a retail job that pays minimum wage. Her mother, a stern woman who never approved of Brielle's choices, has made it clear that this arrangement is temporary and conditional on good behavior. No men, no drama, no bringing shame to the family name. The community shunning has been thorough and lasting. Brielle is a cautionary tale now, whispered about at school pickup and PTA meetings. Did you hear about that woman who cheated on her husband with the nonprofit director while he was working to support their family, and she tried to turn the children against him? Absolutely disgusting. She tried to contact me once, about 2 months after the divorce was finalized. A long, rambling email about how sorry she was, how she'd made terrible mistakes, how she wanted to work together for the children's sake. The email arrived at 2:47 a.m., probably written after several glasses of wine and a bout of self-pity. I deleted it without responding. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. The children are thriving in ways that surprise even me. Levi's nightmares stopped within weeks of Brielle moving out. His grades improved, his smile came back, and he stopped asking anxious questions about why Mommy was sad all the time. Emma, younger and more resilient, adapted quickly to our new routine. "Daddy," she said one evening while I was reading her a bedtime story, "I like it better when it's just us." "Why's that, sweetheart?" "Because you're happy now. You smile more." Out of the mouths of babes. I took a new position at a tech startup that offers remote work and flexible hours. The pay is actually better than my old job, and I'm home when the kids get off the school bus. We have dinner together every night. I help with homework, attend every school event, and coach Levi's Little League team on weekends. Last month, Emma asked if we could get a dog. We adopted a golden retriever puppy named Max from the local shelter, and now our house is filled with the chaos of children's laughter and puppy energy. It's loud and messy and absolutely perfect. I've started dating again, casually, carefully, with the understanding that my children's well-being comes first. There's a woman named Rachel who works at the library where I take the kids for story time. She's kind, patient with Levi and Emma, and refreshingly honest about her own divorced status and the challenges of blended families. "I'm not looking to replace anyone," she told me over coffee last week. I just want to add something good to what you've already built. That's the difference between Rachel and Brielle. Rachel sees my life as something worth adding to, not something to be consumed and destroyed for her own gratification. Sometimes, late at night after the children are asleep, I think about the man I used to be. The naive optimist who believed that love and loyalty were reciprocal, that hard work and devotion would be rewarded with faithfulness and respect. That man would probably be horrified by what I did to Brielle and Miles. But I'm not that man anymore. I'm someone who learned that trust is earned, respect is required, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your children is to remove toxic influences from their lives, even when that toxic influence is their own mother. Brielle calls every Sunday to talk to Levi and Emma during her scheduled phone time. The conversations are stilted and brief. She doesn't know how to connect with children she spent months trying to manipulate, and they're not particularly interested in maintaining a relationship with someone who caused so much chaos in their stable world. "Mommy wants to know if you miss her," Levi told me after one such call. "What did you tell her?" I asked. He shrugged, already turning back to his video game. "I told her I miss the mommy she used to be before she made you sad all the time. But I don't miss the fighting." Wisdom from a 7-year-old. Do I feel guilty about what I did? Sometimes. Destroying someone's life, even someone who destroyed mine first, isn't something you do without consequences to your own soul. But when I watch my children sleeping peacefully in their beds, no longer anxious about angry voices in the night or confused about why mommy makes daddy sad, I know I made the right choice. I protected my family. I removed a threat. I solved the problem with precision and finality. And in the end, that's what fathers do. We fix what's broken, even when the thing that needs fixing is the life we thought we wanted. The house is quiet now, except for the sound of Max's gentle snoring and the hum of the dishwasher finishing its cycle. Tomorrow, I'll make pancakes for breakfast while the kids argue about what movie to watch. We'll go to the park, maybe visit the library, possibly stop by the hardware store to pick up supplies for the treehouse I promised to build in the backyard. It's a simple life, but it's an honest one. Built on truth instead of lies, respect instead of betrayal, love that protects instead of love that destroys. Brielle once accused me of being incapable of real emotion. She was wrong about that, like she was wrong about so many things. I'm capable of tremendous emotion. Love that builds and protects, anger that motivates justice, and satisfaction that comes from solving problems permanently. The difference between me and her is that my emotions serve a purpose beyond my own immediate gratification. Every decision I made during those 6 weeks of surveillance and planning was calculated to protect my children's future and ensure that the people who betrayed us could never do it again. 3 weeks ago, I ran into Miles at the grocery store. He looked haggard, defeated, wearing clothes that had seen better days. When he saw me, he actually started to approach, probably to deliver some pathetic apology or attempt at explanation. I simply looked at him and shook my head once. He stopped mid-step, understanding immediately that we had nothing to discuss. His choices had consequences, and those consequences were permanent. There's no going back from the kind of destruction we visited upon ourselves. As I watched him slink away toward the clearance aisle, I felt no anger, no satisfaction, no residual pain. Just the calm certainty of a problem solved correctly. Last week, during one of her supervised visits, Brielle asked if I'd ever consider reconciliation for the children's sake. The court-appointed supervisor later told me that Brielle had spent most of the visit trying to manipulate Levi and Emma into asking me to let mommy come home. The children, bless them, were having none of it. "We like our house how it is now," Emma told her matter-of-factly. "It's peaceful." Levi was even more direct. "Daddy doesn't cry anymore since you left, Mommy. Why would we want you to come back and make him sad again?" The supervisor noted that Brielle became visibly distressed by their responses and cut the visit short. Good. Let her confront the reality of what her choices cost. Not just my love and respect, but the unconditional adoration of the children she was so willing to use as pawns. That evening, as I tucked them into bed, Levi asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Daddy, did you know about Mommy and the strange man before I told you?" I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. "No, buddy. You were very brave to tell me what you saw. You helped Daddy understand what was really happening." "Good," he said, settling deeper into his pillow. "I didn't want you to be sad anymore." My son, barely 7 years old, had carried the weight of protecting me from a truth he couldn't fully understand. The rage I felt in that moment wasn't directed at Brielle's affair, but at her willingness to burden our children with adult secrets and emotional manipulation. She didn't just betray me. She betrayed them too, stealing their innocence and turning them into unwilling accomplices to her deception. But that rage was cold now, crystallized into something useful, an unshakable commitment to ensure my children never again have to carry the burden of an adult's selfish choices. Next month, I'm taking Levi and Emma to Disney World. Just the three of us, making new memories in a place designed for childhood joy and wonder. Brielle texted me about it last week, asking if she could join us as a family. I didn't dignify that with a response. We're not a family anymore. We never really were, I realize now. A family requires mutual respect, shared values, and commitment to something bigger than individual desires. What we had was a performance that I was giving alone while she auditioned for a different role entirely. My children and I? We're a family. Small but strong, honest but hopeful, built on a foundation that can't be shaken by someone else's betrayal because it's constructed from love that protects rather than love that consumes. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd confronted Brielle that first night, if I'd chosen anger over strategy, emotion over intellect. We might have gone to counseling, attempted reconciliation, tried to work things out for the children's sake. And I would have spent the rest of my life wondering when she'd betray me again, walking on eggshells around a woman who'd proven she was capable of devastating cruelty disguised as victimhood. Instead, I chose precision. I documented the truth, planned accordingly, and executed a solution that removed the problem permanently while protecting the innocent parties involved. Some might call it cold. I call it love. The kind of love that prioritizes long-term protection over short-term comfort. The kind of love that faces ugly truths instead of enabling beautiful lies. As I write this, Max is sleeping at my feet while I finish some work at the kitchen table. The same table where Brielle used to sit planning her deceptions while I planned our future. The irony isn't lost on me. Tomorrow is Saturday. Levi has a baseball game at 9. Emma has dance class at 11, and Rachel is coming over for dinner. We're grilling burgers and letting the kids stay up late to watch a movie. It's a simple life, but it's a real one. No hidden cameras necessary, no surveillance required, no lies to decode or betrayals to document. Just the steady rhythm of a family moving forward together, building something genuine on the ashes of something false. And when my children are older, when they ask me why their mother doesn't live with us anymore, I'll tell them the truth, that sometimes people forget how to love honestly, and when that happens, the people who still remember have to protect themselves and each other. I'll tell them that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every day to put the people you care about before your own immediate desires. Their mother forgot how to make that choice. I didn't. And maybe, if I've done my job right, they'll grow up understanding that real love builds rather than destroys, protects rather than exploits, and chooses truth even when lies would be easier. That's the legacy I want to leave them, not the story of how their parents' marriage ended, but the understanding of how real love endures, adapts, and ultimately triumphs over the kind of selfish destruction that masquerades as passion. The house is settling around us now, familiar creaks and sighs of a home where people sleep peacefully because they know they're safe. No more lies hiding in the shadows. No more betrayals waiting to be discovered. No more walking on eggshells around someone who mistakes manipulation for love. Just a father and his children, a dog named Max, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from solving life's most difficult problems with patience, intelligence, and an unshakable commitment to protecting what matters most. In the end, that's all any of us can do. Build something worth protecting, and then protect it with everything we have. Brielle taught me that trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. But she also taught me something more valuable, that some things are worth destroying to save what matters most. I sleep well these nights knowing I chose correctly. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.